what advice do you have for solopreneurs on dealing with ghosting?
Sales is a contact sport. You've got to be willing to make contact. You've got to be willing to test.
Today, we have Mark Smith on the line. Mark Smith is an old friend. I've known him for many years. We've worked together in volunteer work for men, and he continues to do that work as a solopreneur. He is a coach working with transformation across the board globally with clients everywhere. And I think as a solopreneur, he has a really good story to tell, a lot of wisdom.
Thank you, Vili. I'm looking forward to this as well. And I appreciate the opportunity very much. And as you say, the word journey, it makes me reflect on what a bumpy ride it's been at times.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's start with journey. Tell us a little bit about your journey today. Why are you where you are now? And what are you doing as a solopreneur?
Well, I'll attempt to condense 25 years into a short spurt. The journey for me started when I realized I was on the wrong track. I'd moved to Johannesburg from Cape Town. I was employed by a company at that stage, and I started to feel restless in the new environment and had left my home and my loved ones and my girlfriend behind in Cape Town. So, I started off on the wrong track, like I said, with partying during the week and et cetera, and eventually found a life skills training program, which was extremely good for me and gave me a really good grounding in, what personal mastery is all about. And that bug really bit. So I went back and assisted, did the advanced program, assisted more over a number of years, ended up also assisting other people outside of that program. On a Tuesday morning, we had a circle. And that really got me going on two reins, because I resigned from my job. I started my own company, and then I started my own personal mastery journey and really focused on and committed to that. And those have continued, those threads have continued to be pulled throughout my life. So it's been really interesting.
I think what's also interesting about your journey is that you kind of went from broadly a consultant, leadership coaching, and so on, and as I tracked your path, you narrowed that down more and more to specialize. So tell us a little bit about that journey of narrowing down, specializing, finding your niche, and how that has worked out for you.
Yeah, that's a really great question, because it is about focus, and I've niched from, I have this desire to assist people. So it's always come for me from mission, from, how do I want to show up and add value in the world? That's my number one value, is to add value. So it started with essentially anybody, and it's narrowed down. Having done men's work, which is where you and I met on a nonprofit pro bono basis. In fact, we used to pay to assist on those programs. I did 20 or more of those and took various different leadership roles and really found my feet in that when specifically confronting a man who's got a crusty layer around him, and enabling him to crack that open and see what's inside for him, what gifts he has, and be able to share them. That really lit me up to see how much freedom men gained, how much more relaxed they became, how much happier, with continuous work, men seem to become more balanced, and how much, this is important for me, how much I could trust them and work with them and relate with them, because I'd had a couple of business dealings with guys who were not scrupulous. So I think there was a juxtaposition there. It was about, interestingly, and this is insights really coming to me now, it was around working with men so that I could trust men that I could work with.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. I know it's maybe a little bit off topic for what we are doing here as solopreneurs, but please tell us a little bit about your work with men specifically, and why you're doing this work, And I think specifically also that separation between like this toxic masculinity theme that we have going on and the work that you are doing.
Yeah, well, we can go down that rabbit hole. That's a big one for me. The the way it works in my world is that if I focus on working with men to transform themselves, then that automatically transforms the world. It'll transform their relationships with their children, which is very close to my heart, and it also will transform the lives of other people in their lives. So it has, men, specifically leaders, specifically entrepreneurs, have a big impact. So I've worked with a lot of business owners, guys who have, in some cases, started with no shoes, going to school and being on a feeding scheme, and now having a company. One example is a guy I can think of has a couple of companies that he could sell for $900 million. So those men have an impact, and they cast a shadow, and they create jobs, they create livelihoods, they create value, or they can create destruction. So going back to the toxic masculinity thing, which I do not like that phrase one bit. I think it's because men don't show up for themselves. They put themselves last. They seem to want to be the nice guy in the home. They seem to want to be liked. And, I know the shadow work that I've done has elicited a number of different driving mechanisms behind men's behavior. And one of them is wanting to be liked and wanting to be seen as a nice guy. And what happens is that they suppress a lot of their anger, their displeasure, their frustration, and their self-criticism. So they don't look after and take care of themselves. So then the toxic masculinity, I think, comes as a result of that pressure cooker environment, and then things popping out in an unhealthy way.
Thank you for that. Okay, so let's go back to solopreneurship. As a solo business owner, what has been like the toughest problem that you've had to overcome?
Ooh, myself. Being consistent, showing up, and being on the plan that I've created. In my early days, if I think back to when I was in my 20s, late 20s, I started my company. I'd resigned from the organization I was working with, having done that life skills course. And then very quickly got married, and then helped my wife at the time set up her own business as well. So the two of us were starting together. So one of the biggest difficulties was working from home and having a family and a baby and all of that, and being able to focus was very difficult for me. So I used to work late at night when I'd put my daughter to bed. She'd typically wake up, late, and then I'd go to work and work between midnight and 3 in the morning, and then get some sleep later. So really it's been about overcoming my resistance to being the best that I could be. So really checking in with myself. How committed am I? How much do I really want this? And as soon as I had one or two really big clients, I got clients like Sony Music in the early days, and Universal Studios. I got a couple of really big clients, and that really pulled me out of myself, because then my focus became on the client and delivery and excellence for them, rather than, how am I showing up?
I found that when our businesses mature a little bit, and there's momentum, and there's clients, and clients have expectations, and there's projects, it's easier to be disciplined and get things done, because
Yeah,
it's almost like your client is your boss, and there's some pull.
of course.
But in the beginning,
Yeah.
when you getting started, it's harder, because you don't see immediate results, you don't have that momentum, you don't have that
Yeah.
almost dopamine hit of a client that signs up, and so on. How do you overcome that early phase of let's say a phase where there's not really those constant dopamine hits of success and feedback?
Right.
How do you overcome and see through that phase?
That's a really great question. Different for me now. So I've just begun the journey, or I've been growing for the last year. I've been growing the attuned father with my daughter, and that's the entrepreneurial journey I'm currently on. And it's completely different because I have learned that I need others. Whereas when I was in my late 20s, I did it all myself. I did the invoicing, made the tea, produced the product and, and delivered to the client. So it's different now. I've created more structure. I've got more help, more advisors, and see myself as part of an entity which is not mine, which I can grow. Whereas in the early days, I took everything too personally, and everything meant something about me. So what I did in the early days in terms of handling the growth before the dopamine hits, before the clients, was essentially to create products. I got busy with the creative side of things. So my first company was creating stands and what would you call them, solutions in the retail world. So Musica and those kinds of things. Printed banners. We did all sorts of things, and it was really around getting creative and sparking my creative juices. So whilst I wasn't getting orders necessarily, I was creating products and ideas in the background that I could present to clients in the future. So that gave me kind of a pipeline idea. Oh, this will work for that company, etc.
Yeah, that's good. Yes, I think it's great because it keeps you going, keeps you productive, and it keeps you excited about what you are
Yeah,
building. But there's
yeah.
also a trap in that. You can end up being creative and building products and iterating and perfecting, and not get out there to win clients.
Fortunately for me, I had a long career in sales. So I started my life selling shoes in a shop and then clothing in a shop in the UK. And then when I moved to SA, in fact, I started earlier. I was delivering newspapers age 12. So I'd always earned my own money. So going out there, interacting with people and really finding out what solutions they needed and seeing if I could assist was something that I was always interested in. So going and finding clients, meeting people, being curious about their business and how we could add value was always something that I had a partner in my first company, and she came with me to those meetings, but I definitely led the charge in she had the contacts. So that was how we did it. She had the contacts, I did the sales.
Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a great segue into getting into the theme of the specific skills that we are covering in the soloSei framework.
Yeah.
Just so for everybody to link back into the theme, we are covering four themes: shape, show, sell, and serve. Shape is around kind of building your value proposition and your offer, and figuring out what you want to offer the world. Show is marketing, getting in front of the right clients, making sure people know what you are doing and how you can help them. And then sell is sales, closing deals and winning clients. So let's just go straight with sales, and we'll go back to the others as well if you have some specific tips for us.
Sure.
You've had the benefit of coming from a sales environment, and many of our solopreneur listeners actually don't have that. They come as professionals. They are great at what they do, whether that's carpentry or a personal trainer or an HR consultant, but they struggle to get out there and win clients. What's that one thing that you would say, this is the thing that you learned that will help you?
You have to narrow it down to one thing, don't you?
Start with one thing, and I'm sure
Let's start
nobody's
with
going to
one.
complain if you give more tips and tricks.
Um, what I learned when being trained by a very unskillful sales manager who criticized me a lot, um, when I initially went into meetings with him, was that I spoke too much and was trying
Mhm.
to impress the client. I was trying to sell them on an idea. I was forcing the issue, and it was all about me. And the more I learned to keep quiet and listen, ask questions in a way that led the client to what their real need and gap, what the gap is and what the need is, and then to be really curious about how they saw the solution, what they'd tried thus far, what they hadn't tried, and then bring it back to why I was there. That really helped me because I was able to visit their world and really understand and collect some data and then bring it back, and in some cases, honestly, I was able to say to the clients, I've got the perfect solution. On other occasions, I had to really work hard to adapt my solution to their needs, which was in some cases challenging, and in a couple of cases it was I'm not the right person for the job, and just being completely transparent with them in that. And the
Mhm.
basis of it ultimately came to the fact that I didn't need them to be successful. I wanted to work with them. I wanted to understand their needs, and I wanted to see if there was a fit. But I didn't need them. What I was looking for were the clients that really wanted to work with me, and
Mhm.
and that happened. That happened organically, and I wasted a lot of money and time and energy. I'll give you a quick anecdote on rendering a 3D product. It was for Shell and or Coca-Cola. I decided those were my two targets, and I created this product for a vehicle for people when they're traveling, which was a bin, because there was always rubbish in people's cars. So I thought, here's a solution, and it was called Carbon. Perfect, right? Cheap,
Mhm.
easy to mass produce, something for a big client to give away, and I could not sell that for the life of me. And I realized, because it was something that I hadn't established a need properly yet, so it fell.
Yeah, for sure. I think in the overall phases of getting to market, that's probably, in my mind, the error that most of us make most. We get excited about an idea or a product, and we run ahead, do so many things, but we never actually validate it, whether the clients that we have in mind actually see this as a problem to be solved, and whether they actually need and want this, and whether they will remotely pay
Mm.
what we think we need to get for the product.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've had
So in
some.
sales,
Apologies.
go ahead.
I was just going to say I've had some surprises the other way around as well, where I've gone to a client and we've co-created something that I thought, maybe they'll buy one or two, or this could be something for their head office, etc. And then they've surprised me and ordered 250 for all of their locations, or etc. So
Yeah.
I think that was the lesson for me, was using their ideas against them, as it were.
Yes. Yeah, myself, I'm currently in a situation where I've been working on a value proposition in the academic sector, selling to universities, and it's a long sales cycle, and the validation is there that they want it, and we have the first sales, and we have some traction, but it's still a tough sell and a long sales cycle, and but in the process of speaking to these potential clients, they kept on mentioning something else that's a real problem for them. And so instead
Mm,
of just, if you're not listening, you would keep on trying to sell what you think you should be selling and what your idea was. But because we were listening and noted that there was a very specific problem that they wanted to be solved, we pivoted a little bit to that. And now we have a much stronger short term offer that gets us in the door, and we can still bring in our original idea, which they still want as well, but it costs a lot more and it's a harder sell.
mm,
But it
mm,
helps us a lot with the cash flow and traction.
mm, mm. I've had examples like that. I really hear you.
Yep. When when we talk about sales as well, my last question in sales around closing deals, because it's not only about getting somebody to be interested and so on. You also need to somehow at some point close the deal and say, Mr. Customer, here it is now. Where are we going from here? What's your strategy and what has worked for you?
I think what you said just prior to that question, it was really important in listening and validating and really truly understanding their needs and being willing to pivot and be flexible around what the client needs. The other thing is, I find a lot of people, you mentioned solopreneurs who are not experienced in sales. And I've worked with and mentored a couple of young entrepreneurs in the training and development and coaching world as well. And I've helped link them to organizations that could help them grow their career and their business. And the thing has been self-confidence and willingness to ask for the order outright. So there's been a lot of niceness and connection, and then they leave the meeting without saying exactly as you said. So what are the next steps? Can I count on you coming up with a deposit in the next week, or whatever the question is? And so it's around taking the risk to ask questions to which the answer might be no. It's okay. The no's are gold, or they are the or that get you to the gold of the yes, rather. And
Yes.
I've heard lots of no's, and it's fairly standard if you read any sales books, etc. That find the no's, because you'll get to the yeses that way. And what do they say? Sales is a contact sport.
Yes.
You've got to be willing to make contact. You've got to be willing to test the client's seriousness. Otherwise, the mistakes that I've made and that others have made have been a long-lasting sales cycle, which ended in naught because you weren't willing to ask the question of, so who is it that's going to sign the check, or who is it that's going to authorize this deal? Because often it's the wrong person that they're in conversation with, or the person doesn't have the authority. There's a great relationship, but there's no chance of them moving forward. And then suddenly it gets referred to somebody else who makes the ultimate decision, and there's no relationship. So it's about really being willing to go there and back yourself and ask the questions that you want the answers to, whether they're good or bad, or yes or no.
That's right. Yes. It also leads into the theme of ghosting, which is something that I think for many entrepreneurs is a big source of frustration. You invest in a relationship with a client, you take time to build a value proposition, shape the product, shape the offer, everything, and then the client just ghosts you, doesn't respond to emails or WhatsApps or calls or anything. I'm sure you've experienced this a lot of times as well. What advice do you have for solopreneurs on dealing with ghosting?
I'm just trying to think of examples where I've been ghosted. Um, I've been ghosted when it came to collecting money more than I have in sales. And in one case, I went and pitched up at the client before they opened their doors, and as the owner of the business was walking in, I walked in with him and got the deal for the for the payment.
Okay.
Yeah, people ghosting. What I've learned from my wife, funnily enough, who was also a solopreneur, she had a recruitment company with 25 consultants for a number of years. What she would say to clients, and what she taught me to ask them, is, what did I do wrong? So I'd send an email saying, I'm just checking in. It feels to me as if I've done something wrong. I've either let you down or I've upset you in some way, and I'd like to know what that is. So being really upfront about that, and
Yeah,
asking, what's the gap? And typically that's been responded to.
that's a good one. Thank you. Okay, so let's go to the shape theme. And again, shape is really
Yeah.
about figuring out what you want to take to the world, what problems you want to solve. Um, how do you go about spotting opportunities in the market?
Yeah. The thing for me is that firstly choosing the market. Um, so one of the things that I've learned that's been drummed into me by my father is go and find out what's going on in the market. Go and find out, who's doing what and who's not doing something that you could offer. And I've done a fair amount of research with regards to, for example, fatherhood, and looked at who are the authors, who are the um, shapers of that industry, of that market, and reached out to a number of those people to see, what they've learned and where the gaps are as far as they're concerned. So it's been interesting because technically there would be competition, but I just see it as an opportunity to learn from them. And they have the inside track. So I don't make assumptions. I go and ask the people who have been in the industry or in the vertical that I'm thinking of entering.
Okay, so you currently have a very specific offer that you've developed around fatherhood. I want you to tell us what that offer is and how you shaped that, how you got to that point where you have a very specific value proposition to a very specific target audience. So to start by telling us what it is, I think is very interesting, and then unpack how you got there.
Okay. Having worked with men for a number of years, there was a certain amount of just osmosis, gathering of information and data around, hey, there isn't really anything that I can do for myself as a father, practically in terms of learning and development. There are books, there are programs for dads, there are kids camps with dads and those sorts of things, but there wasn't. I heard over and over, there isn't really something whereby I can work with my son or my daughter or both and and be in a learning environment.
Okay, now he's happy. All right, continue.
A little puppy. Um,
Yes.
yeah, honestly, the passion and drive that I have for fatherhood started with me struggling to get access to my children and and working really hard at that. I ended up writing an article in Men's Health in 2003 around fathers' rights. Uh, there were various um, groups that I was involved with and that I'd heard of. Uh, dads for justice, fathers for justice in the UK, etc., etc. So I kind of got steeped in the fatherhood realm and listened, followed people online, really helped other men who were struggling to gain access, researched the law, I virtually read the whole Children's Act from the South African legal perspective. And so, like I said, honestly, it was just my passion that drove me to find out more about fatherhood. What were the patterns in terms of fathers being left out of the family or finding their way out of the family through divorce, overworking, et cetera, et cetera. What are the real challenges that fathers face? And that led me to really understand that in the realm of two parents, two children, picket fence, a dog, um, there are lots and lots of value propositions there from the perspective of we can always grow and get better. Yet that wasn't really the market. It's really around where there have been blended families. So I have a stepdaughter. I'm very grateful and blessed to have been her dad since she was 8. Or she calls me her spirit dad.
Mhm.
I've worked with men who have been separated from their children. I've worked with men who have children who have alcohol and drugs issues, who have, like I said, blended families, and the two sets of children don't get on. So for me, it was around spotting that it's not as easy to be a father as one thinks. When everything's perfect in the relationship and the marriage and the 2.2 children and everybody has a routine and we go to school, and that often is a wonderful environment. And I've got many clients who have that set up, and that's not where I'm focused. I'm focused where fathers have challenges and difficulties, and I've seen dads get to the end of their tether. I've seen fathers join men's development programs like where you and I met, yet the real root cause was that they felt out of their depth as a father because they hadn't had a dad, right? So they didn't know what it was like to show up as a father, or they'd had an uber critical dad, or an absent father, or a father who just was sitting behind a newspaper. So it's really, so my mission was around creating a world of conscious fathers, to have fathers wake up so that there would be less of these challenges and issues around, as I say, blended families post-divorce, because I believe that it's absolutely possible to have a blended family and a divorce and have great relationships with the children. And I've proven that with a lot of work and time and effort.
Yeah. Fantastic. So what I'm hearing out of this is, I love that you mentioned that you worked from a mission as well. So you tackled and pursued something that you really cared about. That was a pain that was also true for you.
Sure.
You deep researched to really understand the problem better, to understand potential solutions better, and then you honed in there. And what's also interesting, and this is something that we are trying to help solopreneurs with a lot, is you could be out there and say, hey, I'm a leadership coach or a personal mastery coach, like so many thousands of leadership and mastery coaches out there.
Yeah.
But that's not really going to get you far. By the time that you are saying, hang on, actually, I am a deep specialist in this issue, helping fathers. I'm putting words in your mouth for the sake of the argument. Helping fathers connect deeper with their children and build deeper relationships with children and the rest of the family and be better fathers. This is something that is very niche, but still has a much bigger target audience than what most people would actually think.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we as solopreneurs need to try and find. Is that's the goal. Is what is that thing that you care about? That's a real problem that people really struggle with, and that is niche enough for you to actually become the authority and the trusted figure in that, for people to say that's the person to go to.
Yeah. And not necessarily the only person to go to, because there may be others swimming in the same pond, right?
Of course, but there are not as many people swimming in that pond as there are leadership coaches and transformational coaches.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So do you want to add something to that? And then
yeah, the thing for me that really woke me up was that being a father, or being dad and a family man, isn't something that I can just do or be passive about or allow to unfold. It was something that I had to really take hold of in myself, in terms of I have to lead myself as a dad. I have to really show up as a leader, and fatherhood hasn't been presented to the world as a leadership skill, in my estimation, and so that shift in paradigm, I think, is really important for going back to what you were saying though about entrepreneurs who get to understand what their unique and particular offering could and can and will be. It, in many cases, comes from something that you're uniquely skilled at, or extremely skilled at, or extremely passionate about, or something that you've gone through, and it's been a a rite of passage, or um, or a way for you to express yourself. So it's passion and skills, right? And finding that blend is typically where you'll segue into your purpose, and that should help the thinking with regard to niching your offering.
Yeah. I also want to add a little caveat to that, because it's not about finding passion in a naive way, which is also, I think that's also
No.
going the wrong direction. Is, yes, understand your passion and things that you care about, but also link that with market opportunity and problems or needs that actually exist there. Because
Yeah.
I've, honestly, I see too many people going out there as solopreneurs or entrepreneurs pursuing what they love in quotes, and just not
Yeah.
making it because what they love isn't, there's not a market for. So hone that down into
Right.
something that really has a need in the market.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
glue between sales and show. So you're figuring out what you want to offer the market. You have a clear picture of the impact that you want to make in the world. You shape your offer. And before you can just sell and start closing deals, you have to somehow get in front of the right target audience. The first step is to
Yes.
actually know where this target audience lives. Where do you find them? So tell us about your specific situation. How do you find the people that actually need what you do?
Mm. I'm fortunate now to have a big network.
Yeah.
So one of my, I suppose, subconscious skills when I was younger was I went out and sought to assist others and network with people in the world that I wanted to operate in. So, I'd go and give a talk for an organization for free that I was interested in. For example, in the coaching industry, I would go and give talks, get involved in the industry body, get to know the people who were influencers in that area in South Africa or internationally. So for me, it was really around getting to know the people who could make a difference, the people who were already uh, doing something in that field, and see if I could assist them initially. That was really what I focused on. When it came to coaching, for me, it's always been around a belief that the right clients will find me. Right. So again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. Forcing the issue is the wrong approach. For me, it was around uh, the last one we were going to speak of or are going to speak about is serve, right? So it's a service. How can I be of assistance? What are uh, the opportunities to really get to know the industry, know the people in the industry, and find decision makers or find influences in that world. And that served me hugely, because I would be at networking events and just be curious about what people were doing, and then they would take my number and I would take their number, obviously, and then we'd have a conversation around what they were doing. And in many cases, it just was a great connection and a relationship. And then obviously there were opportunities to look for real deals that were being worked on in the background that I could assist with, or that I could help a company or a group initiate.
Okay. In your case, do you rely solely on your network and referrals and so on, or do you also have a direct sales or a direct marketing strategy or distribution strategy?
Yeah, so it's both and.
Mhm.
The personal connections get me in front of people whom I can speak with around particular projects. And then
Hmm.
in the online space, we have a marketing strategy. We have obviously a demographic, etc., and an outreach, and are growing a following through having done the research as to what specifically what fathers who are having challenges experience. My daughter's done all of the market research, and she gives me themes, and then we speak to those in terms of reels and posts online. And what we're doing is growing a following and creating a community, and then creating a conversation with that community. So it's really around, yeah, finding those people who are willing to be in the same net. You know.
Fantastic. And if you, I want to dig a little bit into that. So if you say you are finding themes, or your daughter is helping you finding themes, what does it actually mean practically? So if I'm a new solopreneur and I'm, starting to offer my services, what does it practically mean? How do I find a theme and to link my service to?
Um, have you got an example? I keep going. I can go back to the fatherhood and what we're doing.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I
have you got
want
an
to use
example that?
your. I
Oh,
want
you
to
want to
use
use
your
my
example.
example? Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
okay. Um, Themes for me look at. So I've read lots about fatherhood and stages in men's lives, etc., etc. So young fathers is a theme, dealing with the newness of fatherhood, because it's an explosion. I've been working with my son-in-law quite closely, because he has a 5-year-old and now a 2-year-old, and he had no idea, didn't even know he was ready for fatherhood. So there's that theme of, oh heck, I'm now a dad, and I've got some challenges around. I've got this woman whose hormones are 200% what they normally are in her body, and all of this chaos and complexity. So that's a theme. Teenagers, dealing with teenagers is a theme. Dealing with children who have some emotional or traumatic events, and
Got it.
that need support. Issues with addiction. So there are various themes in the fatherhood realm, and yeah, for me, it's also around connecting with experts. So what I've done is I've got a guy on my board of advisors who is an expert in the field of clinical challenges, in specifically in the American market, and specifically with 16 to 25, that age range. So
Okay.
yeah, that for me has those have been the ways that I've looked at different themes, and areas that I really would love to assist with. I have a niece with cerebral palsy, so I have a sister who and her husband who've gone through, and Simon, my brother-in-law, has gone through real challenges in dealing with that. So I've learned a lot from him, and I've spoken a lot to him about how he gets to show up, and what he can control and what he can't control, and so I've learned from the people that I know and I'm close to.
Fantastic. So out of this, kind of a theme would be typical problems that your target audience struggle with, that you can
Yeah,
relate with and support on. And kind of
yeah,
connect a service on offer to a specific theme.
yeah. And
Okay.
also there will be sub themes, right? So once you identify, oh, this could be a gap in the market, this could be a challenge, I see these examples of those particular challenges, and that's when digging into that, you'll find that it's nuanced and it's not as simple as it
Yeah.
looks on the surface. And if
Yeah.
you're really curious about that, about understanding what people are going through, soon I think your niche will become apparent, or your offering, and the connection between your offering and the niche will be the more you dig in.
Yeah. Okay. So you've got, when you link to a theme and you have specific themes that you know that you can sell into and connect with in your audience, um, how do you make sure that they understand that you actually have a solution for this, or that you can help in that problem?
It's
Have you
easy
got
for me because I
maybe a
just tell my
different question?
story.
Is how do you build that credibility and trust that you are the
Yeah.
person to go to?
I believe that with every fiber of my being that I'm the person that is uniquely qualified in this particular
That's a great
niche.
start. Yeah, you have to
Yeah,
believe,
I
and
really
people have to
do.
see that you believe that. Yes,
Yeah. I think that's the most powerful thing, because energetically, if anybody speaks to me about fatherhood, usually there'll be an opportunity for me at some point to have a tear in my eye, because I'm so passionate about it. I'm so invested. I can do no other. And that level of commitment people feel.
fantastic. All right, so let's move on to serve. You already kind of referenced the importance of serve and how that helps your kind of the iteration of building
Mm.
your business. Maybe start with what you touched on already. How do you make sure that what you deliver actually ends up in repeat business?
Integrity, follow up, commitment, showing up, doing what it takes. Yeah, I think those are the words that spring up for me. But creating a clear pathway for the client so that they know what to expect. Like I said, following up, making sure that I check on how things are going, and ensure that I'm on top of the project. When things have gone wrong, I've communicated and then doubled down, putting products in boxes at 4 o'clock in the morning for a radio station in Johannesburg in my early days. I'm reminded of, there've been printer errors and all sorts of things. And it's around being in integrity with myself and communicating that with the client, and being very transparent about what I can and cannot do, very clear on expectations, and also as the expectations change, or as the circumstances change, which they can do with production and printing, etc. In my former entrepreneurial role, it's so important, and it's something that I value highly as well, is that people keep me in the loop, and don't ghost me.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Being fair
I'm curious
as
about
well.
the box in front of the radio station. Tell us a short version of the story.
Oh, yeah. We had there was a guy called Sia who ran a very new, in those days, radio station in Johannesburg called Kaya FM, and
Mhm.
I managed to get a referral to him from somebody else I knew in the industry, and I went and saw him, and then yeah, just loved the environment. They were interviewing a well-known soccer player locally, so I just hung out and I just stayed there. We spoke about the order once he'd finished work, etc. I just hung out until he was ready to see me. We spoke about the order. He said to me that there wasn't much time. He didn't think it was really realistic, and I said to him, "Challenge me," and he did. He said, "Okay, you want to do this? It's going to put you under pressure," and it did put me under pressure with my partner, because something did go wrong in the printing. The register of the print was such that it was blurred, so I had to reprint the entire job. So we had a gift in a box, and there were printed instructions. So everything was ready and would have been on time. And that was the challenging part. It was the printing going wrong. You know what they say in the printing industry, there's always time for a reprint, and there really wasn't. So they had a launch, and yeah, I was opening 400 boxes and putting the new printed material in those 400 boxes overnight, and then delivered them to the radio
Yeah.
station at 6 in the morning. Yeah.
Okay. So you still met your deadline.
Yeah, absolutely. Commit. with the exception of, if it's going to harm me, I'm not going to commit to the extent it's going to give me a heart attack.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's also a very wise point. Things do go wrong, and when they do, you don't have to self-sacrifice all the time.
No.
You can do what you reasonably can, because quite often
Yeah.
I think clients appreciate more the commitment to fix
Yes.
than breaking yourself to fix.
Yeah. Yeah, I think boundaries are really important, and being willing to say no to a client. That also generates respect. I've said that to clients. I've said, I'd love to help you. I'm unable to because, something has happened on their side that has caused the deadline to be rushed or whatever. And it's also that it's being willing to say, I cannot do this, but I can do that, and can you adjust accordingly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always believe that when things go wrong, it's actually sometimes the opportunity to have a much deeper relationship with your client than when things just go
Yeah.
right. Because when things just go right,
Absolutely.
just you deliver, everything's fine, client's happy, and you move on. But when something
Yeah.
goes wrong, the way you
Yeah.
respond to it is where you win a deeper level of trust, and quite often build deeper relationships with the
Yeah.
clients that you work with.
Yeah. As you're saying that, I'm thinking of an example of exactly that, where I actually a client challenged me with regard to the results of a program, or how a program was going. And because of that conversation, we changed the last module of the program, and then that turned into a module on its own. So I ended up going back around to the client with a different. It was a retentions program, a sales retentions of clients program, which on the back of, initially it was an onboarding program, a client onboarding program. We discovered through our challenge that there was a deeper need, and I built a retentions program for them. So yeah, you're right.
Great, thank you. So last question on the theme of serve. When we are basically delivering and working with a client to finalize a product, quite often clients push back in terms of boundaries and scope. How do you what would be a practical tip for you in terms of how to handle that conversation when you have promised one, two, and three, and the client's insisting that you need to deliver four and five on top of that as well with the same money?
Mm. Um, I was taught a very simple methodology for that, and that is, there are three elements on the triangle. There's time, money, and quality. And so to pass it back to the client, to say that you can have it at the same money, the same price, and I'll be able to deliver it in time, but the quality is going to suffer. So you can have two of the three, or you can have high quality and you can have it on time, but it's going to cost you more. So give them the options, and put it back in their court.
Okay, yeah, I think that's very wise.
Yeah.
As solopreneurs, also, we quite often, just because we have the title solopreneur, we sometimes end up falling in the trap of trying to do everything ourselves. You mentioned
Yeah.
earlier that you're a solopreneur, but you're not necessarily operating alone. Uh,
No.
how do you manage that complexity of delivering what you need to deliver together with other people?
You're referring to delivering with them, or having them in the background so that I can deliver?
How do you do it? So, I mean, I'm sure
Oh,
that
okay.
you must have other people supporting you, whether that's from finance to
Yes.
you know organizing venues and so on. How do you manage
Yes.
the broader ecosystem of doing what you do?
Well, firstly, have the plan, have all of the different elements of the plan mapped out. I use a flip chart behind me. I don't know if you can see what I've got here. There's a big flip chart with, I can show it to you,
Yes,
which I have. What makes a noise? So I plot
that's okay.
out. I use a mind map and I plot everything out. What are the different pieces? And then and then what I do is once I've got that plan, and then I'll take that to the various different stakeholders, and then apportion roles and responsibilities, ask them what's possible, ask them to come back to me with prices, dates, et cetera, what, which, as you say, venues, all of those kinds of things. And I think the biggest challenge for me is around when I have a team, knowing what their expectations are and meeting those. So having an opportunity to really extract from them, what would make them feel more secure, what would give them what they need in order to make progress, all of those kinds of things. So it's about delegation and communication, and really understanding who can do what and when, and not taking on too much myself, because typically that's what I would do. I would do all of the printing, I would do all of the arranging and setting up of success. Became a bit of a control freak in my younger years, or that's what my wife told me I was, and so I learned to give it away and trust and have others really support me, and that's been amazing, because even though I still am pedantic about things being right, I have an opportunity. Also, I mean, AI is an incredible help with regards to that, from the
Yes.
perspective of checking my work and making sure.
Thank you. All right. Have you got a quote that inspires you that you want to share with us?
Uh, there's a quote that's been inspiring me for many years. Nelson Mandela. It's always impossible. It always seems impossible until it's done. There's another quote by Baruch Spinoza: a man's reach should always extend beyond his grasp." Right. So we're always reaching for more than, and it's not from the perspective of wanting more. It's being able to provide more, or serve more, or achieve more, or surprise myself. I look around at my life and I look at where I started and how much I've hustled, and I'm extremely grateful for the fact that people have supported and helped me so much that I've been able to create the life that I wanted to create. I had a very clear dream and a mission in terms of my fatherhood and in terms of my life generally, and that was specifically around having a low stress life. So I've created a life where I've got virtually no debt, which is extremely freeing for me, because I've had debt, yeah, it was extremely important for me, again, personally, because my father grew a business, and the interest rate in the UK skyrocketed, and he lost his business. He'd over leveraged, or over geared, and so that taught me a big lesson. So I became quite conservative around money, and wanted to make sure that there was no threat to my livelihood and my lifestyle, which I've created very gratefully. Yeah, so it gives me an enormous amount of freedom to be able to just show up and do what I love doing, knowing that I can't lose my house.
It's one of the reasons and why people become solopreneurs as opposed to building a venture with lots of employees and products and overheads and costs. Is some people just choose to live a much simpler life and avoid stress of maybe
Yeah.
debt and overheads and paying the bills and so on. And that is
Yeah.
completely legitimate. And one of the messages that we also want to get out there to the solopreneur community,
Yeah.
the entrepreneurship ecosystem doesn't have to mean that you need to start employing people and build products and scale across the
Yeah.
globe and become a unicorn with $100 million. It doesn't have to mean that we can really
No.
make an impact in the world, being a solopreneur, doing what you do really well, and enjoy it in the process.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really important to be good with what you've got, you know, and keep on having that reality of look at what I've done, look at how much progress I'm making, and really stick to the journey. The goal, the ultimate goal. We all have ultimate goals, I think. Most of us, unless you're a monk in a monastery in some far off place where the goal may be to just continue meditating all day. Which there's a part of me that would love to just jump off the merry-go-round at times and just do that.
Yeah.
But it's really a case of people will show up to help and support you. Being willing to accept their help has been really, really a big lesson for me as well. Like I said, my daughter's working with me, and I didn't know she had half the skills she's got. So it's been really incredible to learn that and have people surprise me. But I don't want to do it all on my own. Part of the Attuned Father for me is around a nonprofit. It's about going to communities and creating circles of dads who can have conversations with other fathers around being accountable, conscious, present, engaged dads, and support each other in that way without it meaning I have to have a coach in every country, you know.
Yeah. Not yet. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Mark, from my side, thank you so much for generously sharing, agreeing to be a soloSei legend, and helping so many other solopreneurs who are navigating a similar path. It's been an absolute pleasure to know you and see your journey over so many years. And
Yeah.
my side, I really wish you well in this very worthy course and mission that you are on. So anybody
No,
listening,
thank you.
if you are somehow attracted to the work that Mark is doing around fatherhood, either you would like to get involved and support him, or you need help yourself, please reach out to him. His contact details will be in the description in the YouTube channel as well. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity today. It's great to connect with you, and to all of the solopreneurs out there. Like I said, just believe in yourself, and things will become apparent for you that maybe surprise you. So stay open to opportunities and aware of what may not seem to be really obvious as to somebody who can help you in your network and in your immediate environment, or even in a local community or a business that you know of. It's about trusting that what you're doing and the journey that you're on is worthwhile, and people will be interested. So trust yourself.
Excellent. Thank you.